Today we are installing an MPC remote starter in a 2017 Toyota Highlander XLE with the push-to-start ignition. We'll start by removing the cover over the steering wheel column. To do that, turn the ignition on by pressing the push-to-start button 2 times without your foot on the brake. After you turn on the ignition, turn the steering wheel all the way to the right. It will expose a Phillips screw on the steering column cover. Remove that screw. Now turn the steering wheel all the way to the left, expose the Phillips screw on the other side, and remove that. Release the steering column tilt lever, move the steering column all the way up and all the way out. Press the push to start button 1 time, again without your foot on the brake, and that will turn the ignition off. Separate the upper and lower halves of the steering column cover by pulling down gently on the lower section. This will expose the wiring underneath the steering column. Now we need to access the car's ECU, which is behind the left side of the dash. To do that, we'll need to remove 2 Phillips screws from the bottom of the dash, here and here. We'll also need to remove the hex fastener that is just to the left of the emergency brake pedal. Now use a pry tool to remove the sail panel from inside the door jamb. Now remove the 10mm hex bolt that secures the left side of the dash. And then use a pry tool to carefully remove the cover on the left side of the dash. We're now ready to remove the lower dash assembly. All we need to do is pull gently on both sides and it will drop down. You will see the ECU behind the left side of the dash. The only plug we need to work with at the ECU is the one right here. In some versions of the Highlander, there may be another plug above it. These plugs to the right of it may or may not be there, but this is the only plug we need to be concerned with. The other plug we'll need in the car is the plug that goes to the steering lock module. It's on the underside of the steering wheel assembly. To start the installation, remove the steering lock plug by pressing on the tab, then plug it into the matching plug on the T-harness assembly. Take the male plug from the T-harness assembly and plug it back into the module in the car. Your harness assembly has 2 sets of large white plugs. One is labeled A, one is labeled B. Today we will be working with the B plugs only. Do not use the A plugs. Please note that some of our T-harnesses will only have B plugs. You will not see any A plugs at all. Route those B plugs behind the metal frame that supports the left side of the dash and out in front of the ECU. Remove the tape from the B plug and go back to the plug on the ECU that we identified earlier. Release it by pressing gently on the tab and pulling out. Plug it into the receptacle on the T-harness, and then take the male plug from the T-harness, plug it into the BCM in the spot that you just vacated. Give it a gentle tug to make sure the plug is secure. Your ECU wiring is now complete. Your T-harness assembly has 3 small plugs labeled Evo All, Evo 1, and Door Lock. In this installation, those plugs will not be used. Some of our Toyota harnesses will not have these plugs, so you can disregard them completely. Now it's time to program the Evo module. On your T-harness assembly, you'll see two small black plugs, each with 4 wires. This is known as your data link cable. Take the end of the data link cable that does not have the locking tab, and while you're holding down the program button on the side of the Evo wall, plug the data link cable into the module. Continue to hold the program button while you plug the data link cable into the Evo module. The LEDs will start to cycle, blue, then yellow, then red. Release the button when only the blue LED is lit. If you release the button and a different color LED is lit or LEDs are flashing, unplug the data link cable and start the process again. Now insert the 20-pin white connector, the 6-pin red connector, and the 5-pin white connector. The blue LED should remain lit this entire time. Now turn on the ignition by pressing your push to start button 2 times without your foot on the brake pedal. After a few seconds, the blue LED will start to flash rapidly. Press your push to start button 1 time and the LED will shut off. Programming is now complete. Close all the doors and we'll test the system. Press the lock button on the remote control 3 times. Each press should be about 1 second apart. You'll see the parking lights flash 3 times. You'll hear a beep. And the car will start. Let it run for a few seconds. Then press the lock button 3 times to shut it down. You can also shut it down by simply opening a door while the car is running. Now we need to stow the Evo module, bundle up and stow all the wires. Gather the wires together and bundle them either using electrical tape or Tessa tape or zip ties. Once you have them bundled, you can stow them behind the dash in front of the ECU. One important note, the moving parts you see here are the emergency brake assembly. Make sure that none of your wires interfere with its movement. Reassemble the dash by putting everything back together in reverse order. Replace the cap at the end of the dash. Snap the lower steering column cover back into place and replace the 2 Phillips screws that you took out earlier. Replace the hex nut at the bottom of the dash. Give the system one final test. Make sure that the hood is completely closed, as it's easy to inadvertently press the hood release button on the dash during installation. Installation is now complete.